With video game characters, you can do a lot. You can exaggerate a character's traits to your heart's content, but in some cases, the devs go a little bit of an extra mile and their characters end up freaking insane. Now, you gotta trust Luggo on this. I can judge a crazy character since I'm crazy as well. Now, these characters can either act just regular old crazy, or they can truly have a mental problem written into their personality. Either trait is fine by me. I just want to take some of these seriously, but also have some fun at the same time. So let's go ahead and get cracking, you wackos. You know, the craziness of these characters makes them truly stand out. But among the Team Fortress 2 cast, it's hard to stand out since all of them are memorable. I'm pretty sure if anyone else was doing this list, then they'd choose the Pyro, but I'd rather go for a little more originality. So I prefer talking about the Medic. Even though he's supposed to be a doctor, you can tell that he really doesn't care about his patients' well-being. Your heart blew up? Well, don't worry, I keep some spares in my refrigerator. Oh, your ribs broke? Who needs those? But anytime he's on the battlefield, you're reminded of the reason why he's a doctor. To keep his teammates alive. So that they can mow down everyone. He's only at number 10 since he seems to be a level-headed guy, but the way he goes about achieving his goal makes him a pretty unrespectable doctor. This next character that we're going to talk about has two names. Her first name is Dr. Coyle. Her second name is Mrs. Lordom. The reason Dr. Coyle is listed this low is because there's not much known about her. Other than being another playable character, Dr. Coyle's inclusion in ARMS seems to have two purposes: to give the game an actual villain, and to drop some lore hints. You see, Coyle is like that fanboy or fangirl that this game never had. She's so obsessed with the sport of punching people with spaghetti limbs that she analyzes each character. If you play as her during the campaign, Biff will bring up notes of hers about certain characters. Not only that, but she seems to have some sort of relation to Max Brass, according to her ending. And if you're playing on the hardest difficulty during the campaign, she interrupts the final boss fight and serves as the final boss herself, even going ballistic on her own invention if you beat her. Like I said, she's lower since we still don't know much, but there's clearly a lot of stuff that needs to be dug up. Even though Kirby is a franchise for little kittens, it doesn't stop the developers from making messed up backstories to each of the villains. And without a doubt, I still think that President Haltman from Planet Robobot is easily the most tragic. Now, I didn't even consider him for this list. At face value, he looks completely normal, but his past is completely messed up, and even though he may appear normal, in the head, he's not right at all. Before the events of the game, Haltman ended up finding a supercomputer known as Stardream. During one of the experiments, however, his daughter, Susie, was transported to another dimension. Haltman was depressed because of this, but he kept on using Stardream. He used it so much that he began to trust it, but due to the extensive use of it, his memories started getting eaten away. He didn't even recognize Susie whenever she eventually returned. So yeah, even though it may not appear that way, Haltman is technically crazy on the inside. But it's not his fault that he became this way. It was the use of the machine. I know that Sectonia is also insane and that Highness is crazy at face value, but I think I like Haltman more just because he appears so calm. It appears that everything's going perfectly fine, when in actuality, that couldn't be farther from the truth. Oh, Geist. How do I describe you? I know Bravely Second has a lot of standout characters, but Geist looks like he jumped out of some sort of 12-year-old's creepypasta. And trust me, that's one freaking terrifying pasta. Your first confrontation with Geist is at Florum, where he's leading an attack. Under most circumstances, this is where a boss fight would ensue, but Geist has a little more power underneath his sleeve. Geist is an exorcist, which gives him the ability to undo damage. He uses this on himself as a form of healing, and he also uses it on the citizens to get them to spit out information. While most interrogations usually involve a lot of slapping, for Geist, it looks something more like this. Through his actions and mannerisms, Geist can be made out to be insane, but did anything truly make him snap? The worst that's happened to him is during the events before the game takes place. There is a great plague, and his son Revenant ended up getting diagnosed with a heavy case of not alive. But Geist isn't really off the walls crazy, he's more so just cruel and twisted. As you encounter him more throughout the game, you get to learn more about him, and you can have some sympathy for him. My favorite thing about Geist, though, is your second encounter where your gang takes the role of a bunch of developers and nerf his abilities. So like pretty much every other character on this list, I really like Geist. Wait a second, you hit me? JK fam, no you didn't. I felt like a representative from Suits, a business RPG, belonged on the list, but I couldn't choose one. Because of two reasons. One, there are a lot of insane characters and moments in this game, and two, they don't last for very long. But Geist made it on the list, and he cheats, so I'm gonna cheat too. So, pretty much everyone in Suits is crazy. Keep in mind, this is a world where business takes center stage. At the beginning of the game, you go to some business school, and you end up graduating. Everyone who failed, though, they don't matter to the corporation. Let's just incinerate them. There's also smaller cases, such as Jerome, your partner throughout the game. He's definitely not corrupt, but he's still a little bit wacky. Let's not forget the part whenever you're trying to sell something to this old lady, she refuses to buy it, and then you get to sue her, and the court ends up ruling in your favor. What about the sharks or dolphins in the Undercity? As you can see, this entry is kind of all over the place, but that's because everyone in Suits is at least slightly insane. They're lower on the list because, well, it's still played for laughs, but it's still really entertaining, and I had to put them somewhere. Hold up, I almost finished the entry without mentioning the most crazy person of them all. This guy. Dinosaur, 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 dinosaur. Even though Fire Emblem Echo's gameplay is absolutely awful, the characters make up for it tremendously. Wait, no, that's a lie. But I still think that most of the characters are pretty good, and my favorite overall is Berku. Now, whenever you first meet Berku, he's a total asshat. He's so arrogant and cocky that the first time you battle him, he only brings 2 other units alongside him. But unlike most of the characters on this list, you can see how Berku snaps. Something I despise about most rival characters in video games is how they're like, oh, you beat me, oh, you still suck though, I'm better even though I just lost against you. Berku doesn't play that card. He's actually completely distraught whenever you first beat him. During your next encounter with him, it's almost like he doesn't want to defeat you because he wants what's best for his people. More so, he just wants to kill Alm because he's ticked off. The more you see him, the more insane he gets. He begins to resort to more desperate measures just so he can show off once more, but he never gets that opportunity. The last time you see him before your last battle against him, it's almost like his entire life had come to shambles just because he'd suffered 2 losses from the Deliverance. As for your last battle, he becomes so desperate that he sacrifices his loved one and some of his dignity due to his looks, and he ends up becoming completely corrupt. Berku kinda blew away my expectations. Whenever I first saw him, I was like, oh look, it's just a rival character. Let me guess, he's gonna be all arrogant, he's gonna be like, oh, I'm so much better than you, even though he clearly won't be. But instead, he obsesses over losing, making him so much more entertaining to watch as he slowly descends into insanity. From the moment I started on this video, I knew that there had to be a Sam and Max character, and I kept thinking to myself, who could it be? They're all wacky, memorable, and fun, but you know what? The one that we're talking about is right front and center. Of course, we're talking about Max, the rabbit. Lagomorph, whatever you want to call him. There are other crazy characters in this series as well, but Max is seen more than all of them combined. So, what's so crazy about Max? Well, he's a hyperkinetic, rabbity thing that acts on impulse and nothing else. So yeah, you know that we're dealing with someone pretty special here. He serves as Sam's partner. While Sam is cool, calm, and collected, Max honestly doesn't care at all. He's willing to do just about anything to get the job done if Sam can't do so. And yes, that resorts to killing people most of the time. Max always has something witty to say. You never know what's going to come out of his mouth or come out of his brain for that matter. The real question is, with how impulsive Max is, does he even listen to his brain? Yeah, probably not. Brains are pretty stupid if you're a rabbit with a gun. Now, why is Max so high on the list compared to everyone else? I mean, he has a lot of funny things to say, he goes to drastic measures, he's super hyperactive, you can't even tell what's going through his head most of the time. He's more than willing to take every opportunity he can to spit out something dark. I mean, it's all standard stuff. But boy, does the series treat him very well. He's constantly center stage. He'll always interrupt with some quip, or he'll constantly be placed on a pedestal and have so many great moments throughout the episode. The series treats him pretty well. As if he wasn't crazy enough, you constantly get to see him doing something even more insane. Need a few examples? Well, he became president of the United States for 2 terms, got hailed as a deity, obtained psychic powers, and most importantly of them all, hypnotized the entire world into acting like him. If there's one thing Max has never accomplished though, it's grabbing that phone. Thankfully, Sam's always there to intercept him and prevent him from getting 1 point high. Oh crap. Next up is a character from Psychonauts. Oh, you already know? Alright, it's because he's the most popular thing about this game. Say it with me now. It's your Boyd Cooper. Whenever you first meet Boyd, he's outside of Thorny Towers and the door's locked, so you gotta get him to open it up. Let's go inside of his head, cause that's totally a smart idea. The second you meet him, you can already tell that he's nuts. Though I gotta say, I could sit here and just listen to him spouting out random nonsense all day. But whenever you go inside of his head, unlike most of the other characters where it's sort of reasonable, they usually have their personality traits inside there somewhere. No, Boyd, I don't even know how to describe this. Boyd is one of those crazy conspiracy theorists. Him, as well as all these random guys, are searching for someone known as the Milkman. Don't know why he's so obsessed with the Milkman, but maybe his memory vaults have something to do with it. So looking at his memory vaults, he used to be a normal person. He used to work as a security guard until he got fired, burned down the place, and then got sent to an insane asylum, where he was then hypnotized by old Leander with the power of milk. I can't wait for all the original jokes that the commenters will make about that.
The inner machinations of my mind are an enigma.
You do eventually find the Milkman in his mind, but the Milkman takes on the same appearance as Boyd, and the Milkman's crazy. He uses Molotov milk bottles in his iconic scene that everyone knows about. Then you're just ejected from his mind. Mission accomplished, I guess. I mean, Boyd's no better than he ever was, but he opened up the gate, and he just sits in front of Thorny Towers. Menacingly. There's definitely a lot to be interpreted here. I once even heard a theory about how the Milkman is supposed to be Boyd's true consciousness that was locked away by the hypnotism. But regardless of what all that means, Boyd does eventually return back to his normal self after being able to burn down Thorny Towers at the end of the game. In his previous state, not only did Boyd need some serious help or therapy, but he also needed something very nice to drink. What did you think I was going to say? This one scares me. I know that the whole Mother series can have sort of a dark theming overall at times, and there were plenty of other characters I was considering for this list, but I don't think I'll be able to talk about this guy for a long time. And who knew that quite possibly the most evil being in video game history could hold a name such as Googie. Up until this point, this list has been mostly fun and games with the occasional serious entry. Giglo, let's just say Gaigu is to be taken seriously. Before the events of the game, are you seeing a trend here? A couple known as George and Maria were abducted by aliens. Oh, well, that's kind of cool. But the thing is, they're not quite like how you would expect. Gugu was raised by George and Maria, but George eventually betrayed the planet in order to gain information on PSI. Due to this incident, Gugu Gaga was sent to attack Earth, but singing the 8 melodies to him like how Maria used to convinces him to run away because he just can't bring himself to attack Earth. So those who aren't familiar with the series might be saying to yourself, Luggo, you dumbo, he's not evil. And I'd love to say that you're correct, but I have no idea what happened to him. Because whenever you encounter him in Earthbound, he's become the embodiment of all evil and looks like this. Gygus, your mother told you drugs would ruin your life. And yeah, that embodiment of evil thing I just said, that's no exaggeration. That's exactly what he's become. He showed signs of cracking at the end of Mother 1, but there's no telling what happened here. Gygus has been completely and totally changed. He's nothing but pure evil now. All I can add to this is, abort the mission! Abort the mission! Oh, Gygus, where did we go so wrong? I like to think that my criteria for this list was kind of all over the place, but that's because I consider a lot of different tropes crazy. We've got characters who delved into insanity, characters that were insane to begin with, characters that are pretty inconsistent overall, but I don't think I could compare number 1 to any of these guys. I really wanted to choose a Pokemon character for this list, and sure enough, I didn't think this would happen, but he's number 1. Ghetsis may not be my favorite Pokemon villain, but he's easily very high up there. Throughout Pokemon Black and White, you constantly see a team known as Team Plasma who are trying to liberate Pokemon. You also have several confrontations with N as well as Ghetsis. Now N is in the spotlight most of the time, while Ghetsis he's more so in the background. But after you battle N, for what seems to be the final battle and would be a fitting end to the game, Ghetsis comes in. As it turns out, Ghetsis was the leader of this whole operation, but he didn't want to liberate Pokemon just because he thought they deserved freedom. No, he wanted everyone to release their Pokemon so no one could oppose him. How did he achieve this task? Through his adopted son N that he used. And N wasn't even aware of this whole scheme going on. He actually cared for Pokemon. Ghetsis, on the other hand, he doesn't care. Oh, and this isn't his only adopted child that he tried to use. But what I love the most is how this whole scene plays out, how Ghetsis just unloads everything on you at once. And the thing with the battle against N was, as long as your team was well constructed, it was a pretty even battle. Ghetsis, nah, he's got some of the strongest Pokemon in the region. Oh yeah, that and Hydreigon. And ironically, even though Gygus is supposed to be the embodiment of evil, I think Ghetsis deserves that title more. Not just because of all of his actions, but also how he perceives himself. He thinks that he's godly and above everyone else. He calls himself perfection. Oh, and let's not forget, in Black 2 and White 2, even though his appearance in there isn't nearly as great, he has improved his thought process a little bit. Huh? You think you can beat me in a battle? Not if you're dead. And if what I'm describing here, it may sound like that I hate Ghetsis. That's the complete opposite. This is so interesting to watch. And like I said, that scene right before the battle against him is truly perfection. It's your Loi Buggo, and I know how to make Ghetsis not scary.
Nom nom nom.